Wow, my teeth are surprisingly white. What's up? It's funny how I'm not doing the whole what's that? I can switch it up, I can switch it up. When you got the sauce, you don't really gotta do too much, you know what I mean? It just flows, you know what I mean? It just flows. How y'all doing though? Hmm. Really, mom? Anyway, I'm still grateful because it's food, but bless your heart, bless your heart because you gave me what you like, which is why I told you to eat, but to each his own. It's not bad, actually. But yeah, I think I'm speaking French and Spanish. Spanish is gonna be funny because my Spanish is not what it used to be, you know what I mean? But I already know that as long as I don't use it, I'm gonna keep losing it. So I gotta use that muscle, you know what I mean? I gotta use my muscle because it's like I keep coming up with excuses for not speaking Spanish. But at the end of the day, I gotta do me. I can't keep living my life for other people. I can't keep limiting myself for other people. You know, people who are gonna rock with me are gonna rock with me regardless. But there's a reason why I don't use the other two language. But I'm gonna get into actually, you know what? I can make this into the next video. But yeah, there's a reason why I wasn't really so hyped to speak, to really do me, to really be me. And I think that it's a good segue into what I want to talk about today. Actually, more. I'll be right back. It's really funny how I started speaking French, thinking English was cool, but it wasn't really my thing. I wasn't even thinking about Spanish. Nobody around me at the time was speaking Spanish, so it wasn't a thing. But in school, we did have, English class, you know, English this, English that, and like in French, there's a whole bunch of English words like weekend. Everybody knows what a weekend is, but weekend is, I think it's an English word. But I don't think, well, growing up, I didn't think weekend means weekend. It just was the weekend. Everybody's like weekend, weekend. You say weekend, everybody knows what a weekend is. But when I started really to understand English, that's when I understood what a week was. You know what I mean? And then weekend is like the end of the week. But English was like my third language, to be honest. Anyway, so I went to Spain, by the grace of God. My grandma made it happen. My aunt was over there, she was working there, so my grandma made it happen. And I went to Spain for a year. And talk about a culture shock, okay? You go to a place where nobody speaks your language. Everything is different, It's hot, which is a cool thing, because, in Gabon it's hot also, but it's more like humid, tropical climate. So it rains a lot. In Spain, I don't think it rains that much. But one thing about Spain is that it's hot. Even during the winter that I went, I only did one winter there because I only been there for a year. But I remember that it was snowing, but it was so hot that the snow didn't even stick. It was funny. That's how hot Spain is. But the cool thing is they got fountains all over the place. So, it keeps you a little bit not too hot or whatever. But yeah, the cool thing was I went to a French school. So that was my refuge. I went to school and I felt normal like, again, somehow. But, the kids over there were all kinds of nationalities. But I would say mostly like Spanish kids who knew a little bit of French here and there. So it was, and then you had French kids who were learning Spanish just like me. So it was a good time. It was a good time. It was a good time. Like I really enjoyed my time in Spain. Like Spain Spain is like my second home. You know, I'm a go back there. You know, I'm gonna go back there, and I'm gonna have a mansion or a couple mansions there, and just, you know, that's really my second home for real. However, with all that being said, some Spanish people are racist as hell, man. Like, yeah, I have to say it. You know, I gotta keep it real with y'all. Some Spanish people are racist. Like, I would tell you what happened, but I'm not gonna focus on negativity. You know what I mean? I'm gonna tell you a better story. So there was a festival. I forgot the name. I'm gonna get to it whenever it comes. But there was a festival at some point where everybody went to like the city center, and you know, everybody was partying. I want to say it was Halloween, but maybe it was Halloween because we had to dress up, right? So I dressed up as Michael Jackson, right? Back when he had the afro. So I mean, I didn't do much. I just had the afro, and I don't think that was my intention to look like Mike, but I had the afro, and you know, I was walking with my peoples, and you know, people were like, Michael Jackson, Michael Jackson. You know, it was fun. It was fun. It was a good time. So there was more good than bad. I'm gonna say that. You know, I can't put racism on the whole country because that's not true. Obviously, there's good and bad everywhere you go. But most of the people were actually cool. I gotta keep it real, right? Most of the people were actually cool, so it was a good vibe overall. Okay. So that's what I'm gonna focus on, the good part. But yes, I remember, like, you know, the first couple of days I went there, it was strange. You know what I mean? It was strange. It's just everything was different. The food was different. The air was different. The smells were different. The cars were different. The people were the same, right? That's never gonna change. But you gotta understand, like, where I grew up in Gabon, there is multiple races and cultures and personalities, but most of the people are black. You know what I mean? You're gonna see white people here and there, or other nationalities and stuff like that, but it's rare. You know, it's kind of like pepper. You know, well, some people put a lot of pepper in their food, so I can't even say that. But it was sparse. Now, when I went to Spain, it was the opposite. A whole bunch of white people and a few black people here and there. So there was that, but you know, I wasn't really shocked about that. But what I really was shocked about was the language, because I did not understand anything. Like, I remember my ride from the airport to the house. The driver was Spanish, of course. The radio was in Spanish, of course. So I didn't get it. It was weird. It was strange. It was wonderful. It was a cool time. It was one of the best memories in my life, as a matter of fact. But anyway, we got home, and I would describe the house that I was living in and things like that, but I don't even feel like doing that because that's besides the point. But it was nice where it was at. Okay, it was nice. I mean, just put it like that. But what I want to talk about is one time I turned on the TV, right? Because you know, there was a TV at the house. So I was like, yeah, let me just see what's going on. So I turned on the TV, and man, I think it was like the news or something. and these people were speaking so fast. It sounded like running water. Like, you know how you turn water on the faucet and you hear like brrrr? That's what I heard. I was like, what the hell? So of course I turned the TV off, and I went back to my room, you know what I mean? And the cool thing is, now I had a computer and I had internet. In Gabon, I didn't have a computer and I did not have internet at the time, you know, but we're talking like 2007, 2008. So I was, how old was I? I was like probably like, I want to say 8, 9, 10. You know, I don't feel like doing the math, honestly. But I was born in 96, so you do the math. If you feel like it, of course. But yeah, I was fairly young. I didn't have internet because, you know, it wasn't that culture, you know what I mean? The culture at the time was, you know, you want to play, you go outside. That was, man, when I have my kids, we're gonna have to do something about that, because the last thing I want my kids to be is iPad babies. No way. I didn't see no iPad or no screens until I was a teenager, to be honest. Right. So okay. I want to say so much, but I want to keep it classy, you know. I want to elevate my channel. I want to do better, you know what I mean? Even the way I speak, you know, I want to, because I'm trying to get to the main audience of things, you know what I mean? I'm trying to go mainstream with this, because of course I got a niche that I'm building, but it doesn't hurt to be also mainstream a little bit, you know, more money, right? So I'm always thinking like, and of course it's not just about the money, blah 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 blah, but hey, money is very essential, you know. I didn't really care about money like that. I never really cared about money like that, because, you know, my parents worked. Okay, let's put it out there. My parents, I'm talking about, yes, my parents worked so that I wouldn't really have to want or need for nothing. So growing up, I grew up with a silver spoon. I'm gonna be real. You know what I mean? I grew up, you know, eating proper with a fork and a knife, and you know what I mean? That's just what it was, you know? So that was a blessing, to be honest. So I don't really take it for granted. I'm grateful for that, because I've seen both sides. Growing up, I didn't want or need for nothing. I didn't even know what poverty was until I started having friends. And I'm not talking about friends from school, because, you know, kids at school were also privileged. So it wasn't that. I'm talking about friends, my neighbors kind of thing. You know what I mean? But even my neighbors were kind of privileged. But when I moved to my grandma's house, that's when, well, I didn't really move to my grandma's house, because I used to live in my grandma's house or my mama's house, you know. I used to go back and forth all the time. When my mom used to be at my neighbor, I used to call my grandma like, hey, can you send somebody to come get me? She was like, oh, I've been waiting for you. You know what I mean? It was amazing. I had a beautiful childhood, man. That's why I'm so excited for my own family to come together, so that I can do that for them. You know what I mean? That's my whole vibe. I want to be able to provide for them the way that my parents provided for me, because I traveled a few countries as a child. I seen a few things as a child, you know what I mean? And that's beautiful for a child to experience, because when a child, the first 7 years of your life is when you basically a sponge, right? So you are a product of your environment the first 7 years, because you don't really think for yourself yet. You just go along, blah blah blah, blah. That's when you really learn how to think. So the first 7 years of my life were lit. They were lit, man. They were lit. Like, I traveled, I had toys, I had friends, I had love. Man. Well, love is kind of a mixed story, because early on, I grew up, you know, I'm not bragging, okay? I'm really not. I'm just speaking my truth. So hopefully it comes across the right way. But like I said, my parents worked to put themselves in a position where I wouldn't have to want. Why am I apologizing? It sounds like I'm apologizing for my wealth. I'm still trying to deal with everything. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to say this the most humblest way I can, because that's really, it would be a waste for me to speak and try to share my experiences, and for people to be like, "Oh, you just a silver spoon kid. You don't know anything." If you think that, I guess you really don't know me, right? So I can't even blame you. But I'm gonna stop apologizing for my wealth. Nope. I'm gonna stop doing that. But like I said, early on, right? In the early days, right? Like, we're talking like from 0 to, well, not really. I'm going too far. But like when I was like 3 to 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, right? 3, 4, 5. Yeah, around that time. Or even a little bit before that. Because I can still remember. So like 3, 4, 5, around that time, I basically grew up with my little sister. You know what I mean? My little sister, my uncle's first child. You know what I mean? We were both born in the US, so we were both Americans. So it only made sense for us both to be together all the time, right? So that's who I grew up with, you know what I mean? So, you know, anyway, so our house at the time, right? At the time, my mom, okay. All right, this is it. I don't know how to say this without sounding funny, but anyway, so I grew up in a compound, okay? And what I mean by compound, I mean we had a property that had multiple properties inside of it. So my mama house was right here, my uncle house was right here, and my aunt's house were around there, right? And there was more, but I don't feel like talking about all that. But the point I'm trying to make is I used to go from my house to my uncle's house. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. And basically, at my uncle's house, there was my sister. So I used to go there a whole lot because I didn't want to be by myself. And nobody wanted me to be by myself anyway, right? So we're kids, so we're always together. And that's where everything was beautiful. You know, I was a child. I was with my sister, and everything was cool, and things like that. This is therapy, by the way. So I apologize if I'm not, fast like I used to and just direct with the point, because this is a different kind of video. Okay. Anyway, so everything was cool, but then things happen, right? That are none of my business, so I'm not even going to speak on it. But all I'm going to speak on is the fact that my sister was gone. Okay? Like, I went from being with my sister all the time, everything was cool, to all of a sudden, my sister is gone. And nobody really explained me what's going on because I was a child. But from that time, I really started to feel alone. And I'm the only child already. But the fact that my sister was gone, that's when I really, 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 really started to feel alone. You know what I mean? I don't feel like crying on camera, so I'm not gonna cry on camera. And I don't feel like crying somewhere where you can't see me, because I want to finish with what I started. The beautiful thing about being a child is that you don't know anything, really. So you don't know what loneliness means. You don't know anything other than love. Because we are love, right? That's our natural state of being. So that's what it was. But when my sister was gone, that's when I started to feel negativity for the first time, loneliness for the first time. And that's when I really started to mature. A little bit too quickly, actually. You know what I mean? That's really where it started from. Like, y'all see me, and I don't know how y'all feel about me, really. But I feel like, well, I don't feel like, because a lot of people told me that I sound very mature for my age. It's nothing new. It's always been like this. But this is where it comes from, and I never spoke on it. This is my first time speaking on it. You know what I mean? This is profound. This is deep for me because this is when I started to become aware of my surroundings. This is where I kind of like lost my innocence, if you will. And that's how I became mature, because I started to question things. The first question that I can think of was, where's my sister? You know what I mean? And nobody could give me a straight answer. So of course, there were the toys that me and my sister used to use. Well, some of them, not, because she took some of the toys as well. And I have yet to talk to her about this, because we never talked about this. But I wonder how it affected her. You know what I mean? I really do. But yeah, she's saying, okay. Anyway, so I'm the only child from my mom and my dad, supposedly my dad, because I have questions about this one. And I'm going to get into that later, or maybe another day. But for my mom, for sure, I'm the only child. On my dad's side, I'm not too sure. But from my knowledge, I'm the only child from my mom and dad. Now, for those who don't know, it's a long story. I don't even feel like getting into all that. But long story short, I grew up with my mom, right? I didn't grow up with my dad. I never really seen my dad, except when I was a toddler, like an infant. And I don't remember that, of course. But, the beautiful thing about it is that they made plenty of pictures of that time period. So that's how I know who my dad is, and, everything like that. But I didn't really grow up with him, so I don't know him like that. So for me, my dad was my uncle, because he was the only man really around me. But I'm not even gonna get into all of that, because it's a whole kind of worms that I'm not sure if I open it how I'm gonna channel all of that energy. And the last thing I want is for it to turn negative. So I'm not even gonna go there right now. But man, this is more difficult than I thought. Usually I'm able to talk about things that are not necessarily the easiest thing to talk about to people and not really be affected by it, right? But now that I'm really talking about myself, that's when I really start to feel and understand how people must have felt when I talk to them about certain things, you know? Like my brother, for example, you know, like a lot of times when I talk to him, like I'm able to talk about subjects that most people wouldn't dare to talk about, and I do it easy. But I am now starting to understand that the only reason why it was kind of easy for me to deal with that is because I dealt with a huge pain as a child, now that I think about it. A huge pain too early, too soon. That's another blessing because I thank God that I turned out okay. But this kind of pain right here is the reason why some people turn to drugs or, don't turn out the best ways. You know what I mean? Because when you deal with pain, you know what it is. You know what I mean? If you're human, then you know what pain is. So I think you understand what I'm trying to say. I just can't come up with the words right now. But yeah, too early, too soon, man. Too early, too soon. But by the grace of God, I was surrounded by love. You know what I mean? Yes, I didn't have my dad biologically, but I had my uncle, my mom's older brother, who serves as a figure of my father. So it was cool, you know what I mean? I knew what a man was. However, with all that being said, my grandmama only had one son, which was him. And she had, I don't feel like being too specific because at the end of the day, this is my family. So I don't want to speak about family business. You know what I mean? There's a time and place for everything. And as much as I'm a public persona now, some things I'd rather keep private just for privacy and obvious reasons. But yeah, I grew up around women most of the time. You know what I mean? My uncle was there, but most of the time I was around women. So of course I picked up on a lot of women ways and things like that, and that's why a lot of people thought that I was effeminate and this and that and that and that and that. And the cool thing is, when you're a man, it don't matter if you're a little bit effeminate or whatever. Because when you reach puberty, at least for me, right? Before puberty, I didn't really see anything really. I didn't really care about much really. But as soon as I started to have that puberty stuff, that preteens, and teens go through, that's when it's like my third eye opened, you know what I mean? And I started to really look at girls in a different way. So yeah, I'm definitely not gay, right? I'm definitely not gay. So, but people always like to throw shots, you know what I mean? They always, oh man. And that's another reason I believe I was kind of shy growing up and things like that because, man, it's like I've been famous my whole life. You know what I mean? The way, now that I look back, it's like the way that people used to talk about me, talk to me, or whatever it was, it's never been really, well, never is a strong word, but let me put it like this. Outside of my family, which some of my family also were on some funny stuff, but it's neither here or there. Most people treated me as the grandson of, right? So I wasn't really treated as a human being for real. I was just treated as, oh yeah, he's a so and so, or oh yeah, that's so and so. So it's kind of like, I guess, for celebrities, what they experience and how they always like kind of, you can tell when you look at celebrities, man, I mean, if you really look at celebrities, most of them, they're just trying to have a regular life, man. They're just trying to stay low key. They're just trying to enjoy some peace of mind, man. It's real. It's real because I experienced that my whole life. And that's the main reason why I went to Spain, right? Because I remember it like it was yesterday. My grandma wasn't really talking to me, but as a child, I was always, again, because of what happened in the past, right? And I already talked about it, so I don't feel like talking about it again. As a child, I always had a very vivid imagination and I was always questioning things, right? My first question was, where's my sister? And that's how the millions of questions came after that. So I accumulated a wealth of knowledge early on. You know what I mean? I matured quickly as a child. So I was always interested in grown people's business. I wish I didn't, but I couldn't help it. You know what I mean? It was just in my makeup. And like kids, they want to know things. They're very nosy. So my grandma was like, you know what? People talking too much about him. Too much. You know what I mean? I really was popping. I'm trying to stay humble about this, but I really was popping. I really was popping, and it became uncomfortable. So my grandma was like, you know what? Let's send him away because she knew, you know what I mean? She's mature. She knows human nature. She knows when people put you up, they would love to break you down. That's just human nature. You know what I mean? It's not even a black and white thing, really. It's just how humans are. So because of who I was and because of my imagination and because I was always questioning things, I sounded amazing to people because I was a child, but I was talking like I'm like 10 years older. You know what I mean? And people were like, how in the hell are you talking like this and you're still a child? You know what I mean? So I always piqued people's interest, and people were always interested in me. And of course, I had a pretty cool personality, right? I was a cool guy. I still am. I still am, believe it or not. Um, so people love me. You know what I mean? People love me, and people love to talk about me. And one thing about my country is that we are scratching 2 million, right? We barely 2 million people. But back then we were scratching 1.5 million people. So it's really like a community, right? It's really like a village. So everybody knows everybody, and everybody talking about everybody. So let's just say that my name came up a lot, right? Not only because of who I was, but also because of who my parents were. So, you know what I mean? People were always intrigued or interested or curious about us or me or whatever it is. So, yeah. Anyway, so that's what it was, right? Like I remember one time we went to some family relatives' house, and there were other kids and things like that, and most kids, and like, you know, in some education, right, you get, when we serve food during dinner, we serve food in some educations, right, like in some cultures I should say. um, there's like two tables in a way, or two places where people eat. There's a table for the adults, right, with the food, and then there's the table for the kids and with their food separate. So anyway, so we went to that spot, and there was a whole bunch of kids and everything. And so I was with the kids, right, because I was a kid, and we started eating, right? But remember what I said in the beginning, like I was raised different, right? So my manners and mannerisms were so advanced even back then that people just, you know what I mean? It's like I always had, I don't want to say evil eye, but I feel like that's what it is. You know what I mean? I gotta keep it 100. That evil eye was always on me. You know what I mean? It's like I always been famous. People always used to look at me, and I never liked it. I always used to hate it. Even as a toddler, funny story. Um, there was a girl, a baby girl, who had a crush on me, and I was a toddler, so I didn't really understand that, right? So she used to always stare at me and like say funny things, and I was like, "Why you acting weird?" I was so upset. I was like, "Why you acting weird? Why you keep staring at me?" Blah 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 blah. And the whole time, the baby girl was just into me. You know what I mean? And so I got home and I told my mom, I was like, I can't believe this girl kept staring at me and things like that. And she started laughing at me so hard. She was laughing at me so hard, man. She was like, "You silly. You don't even know that she likes you. That's what girls do when they like a boy." Blah, 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 blah. And that's when I was like, "Oh, really? I didn't know. But that's weird." You know what I mean? So that's what it was. Anyways, so I used to have nightmares about girls running after me and shit, like, not, things like that. Anyways, I'm probably, this is probably TMI, but it is what it is, right? Um, I went so far with this. But yeah, that's kind of who I am, right? And where I come from and why you might be interested in watching me, or why you might be interested in the things that I talk about and who I am as a person and where I come from, and this is still a very small part of who I am, right? Or my story. But this is just me. So, jealousy, envy, and all of that good stuff is nothing new to me. I say all of that just to say this. I said all of that just to say this. So, long story short, that's why I'm gonna keep pushing myself, but I'm really gonna keep being myself, you know what I mean? Because now I have tools which I did not possess at the time, because I was kind of like running away from fame, running away from notoriety, because I always been famous, really, just because of where I was born, you know what I mean, and just because of the person that I am. Another story, like I said, I had plenty. I didn't have biological brothers or sisters because my parents only made me, but I had a whole bunch of cousins, and I had a whole bunch of friends, because I had a whole bunch of toys, right? I'm a Capricorn, so my birthday is right after Christmas, so I get gifts and then I get more gifts. But the only thing I didn't have was people to share those gifts with. So that's why I always had lots of friends and people around me, and that's why people always liked me, and that's why I was always popping. But envy, jealousy, and all of that was part of the equation as well, right? And of course, I was naive for the most part. So a lot of funny things happen. But the good thing is that the friends that I did have at the time were solid, you know what I mean? So I'm thankful for them, and I'm still in contact with some of them to this day. Although I need to call back one of my homies, because I said I was going to call him back and I didn't. So, I'm still working on myself. I'm not perfect. But I'm sure he understands, right? Hopefully. So I'm going to call him pretty soon, and, we're going to chop it up. But yes, this is why I'm extremely rich and wealthy. This is what it really is. I've been stressing about making money, this, getting a job, that, and all of this and all of that, but trust me, money is the last and least of my worries. So, if anything, I'm just trying to do me, right, in a way that makes sense to me, because I know that money is coming and money is already here. So, it feels good to say that, you know what I mean? It feels great it's like a moment of clarity right now. It's amazing. I'm blessed, man. I'm really blessed, and I'm so thankful to God that my life happened the way it did, because if it didn't, I definitely wouldn't be talking to you right now, right? And I definitely wouldn't be who I am right now, who I am today, you know what I mean? So I'm thankful and grateful for the gifts that I was already born with, for my mom, my dad, my whole family, my friends, everything, my pets, my animals, my flowers, everything. I'm so thankful and happy for everything, because life is beautiful, Life is beautiful, and a lot of times we tend to forget it. You know what I mean? Like, breathing is a gift. We tend to forget it. We tend to think about what we don't have and focus on that and be depressed and be this and be that and be negative, and we forget that we already lit. You know what I mean? A lot of people wish they could be breathing right now, but they can't. You know what I mean? A lot of people wish that they could do what you do right now, but they can't. A lot of times we take things for granted, man. Right now that I'm talking to you, my beautiful country doesn't have the necessities. And what I'm talking about necessities, I'm talking about reliable water and reliable electricity. Of course, there's food because, you know, Gabon is blessed. You know, the soil is rich in all kinds of gold, diamonds, everything else, but we still lacking in the basic necessities. That says a lot about management, you know what I mean? So I'm not even gonna focus on that because again, I could go left, and I'm not trying to go left. I'm gonna keep this in a certain vibration, right? But yes, I'm thankful and grateful for everything, you know. Anyways, yeah, man, you have to develop an attitude of gratitude. There's no way around it. Gratitude is really where it's at. It's not about the gifts you get for Christmas. You know, it's about to be Christmas in a couple days. It's not about the gifts you get, you know, for your birthday. It's not about nothing, man. It's about you. It's about your mindset. You know what I mean? You can make anything happen. But who are you? You can get money. You can win the lotto. Somebody can, like Neymar, right? I heard a billionaire just said, okay, you know what? Give him all my billions. Neymar became a billionaire recently. Hey, anything can happen. It's not about the money though. You know what I mean? Life is so rich as it is. You are so rich as is. You just don't realize it. You think being rich is just about money. It's not. Some of the brokest, poorest people are actually rich by your standards, meaning they have money. But guess what? They are poor and broke. Why? Because they are trapped. They live in beautiful prisons. They can't really go out like you can. They can't really enjoy themselves like you can, because guess what? In the back of their mind, they feel like everybody's out to get them. They feel like everybody's out to get their money. That's not the type of life you want. With all that being said, you should get a lot of money, but I just want you to understand, it's not about money. Money is essential because we all need it and use it. So of course, there's plenty of ways to get money. Yes, if I was really about the money, I could have done so much to get a lot of money. But you know what? A long time ago, I seen some things, but more specifically, I seen a video of Napoleon Hill himself. It's on YouTube, where he was talking. And I didn't understand much of what he was saying at the time because, you know, Napoleon Hill is very rich, you know what I mean? So when he talks, you really gotta you gotta break it down, you know what I mean? If you're not used to that talk, you know, if you're not used to that rich people talk, it's hard to understand. But you're gonna get whatever you can digest, right? So I was able to digest a little bit of nuggets here and there, but the gist of what I got is that, hey, it's not about money. It's about character. You know what I mean? Because even when you get money, what are you gonna do with it? You can only buy so much things. You know what I mean? When you get a lot of money, you know, all eyes are on you. There's some people who don't have money, who are suffering, who are poor, destitute, who don't have no house, who don't have nothing, but you got a whole lot of money. So everybody's looking at you, kind of hating on you because you live in the lap of luxury, while some people are struggling. You know what I mean? So people are always gonna look at you like, damn, can you help me out? Can you do this? Can you do that? So basically, from what I got from Napoleon Hill at that time is that with great power comes even greater responsibility. And you know the culture today, you know what I mean? It's about chasing the bag, getting the baddies, you know what I mean? Getting this, getting that, shining on them, you know, doing this, doing that, and it's cool, don't get me wrong. Everybody loves shiny things. I don't really like shiny things like that because I'm shining already. I've been shining my whole life, so I'm cool. You know what I mean? I'm trying to chill for real. I enjoy my quiet life for real. You know what I mean? I don't need people in my business. I don't need people. I don't need people in my business. You know what I mean? I don't need people to be looking at me with those big eyes like, gimme, 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 gimme. No. I experienced that my whole life. I'm cool. With all that being said, I got lost in the sauce, you know, growing up, because when I got out of my family unit, right, and I experienced the word, right, you know, I got very much influenced by the culture, which is, you know, go getter. You know, you gotta be a go getter. Get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. Chase money, chase money, chase money, chase money. So of course, you know, it sounded good with the music and everything was cool, but I always knew deep inside that, hey, I'm not really from the struggle, you know, so I was kind of faking it for real because it's cool, it's motivational. Don't get me wrong, but I'm a silver spoon kid. You know what I mean? I've been traveled. You know, I've been to France plenty of times. I'm not amazed by the French culture because I'm French. You know what I mean? Of course, I'm African, but you get my drift. We got colonized, or blah, blah, blah. So it is what it is, right? So it's always been awkward for me in that respect. But you know, when you're young and when you're young, you very much influenceable. There's a word I'm looking for, but I can't think of it right now. Young and what's the word? Okay, I can't think of the word, but basically, when you're young, you think everything is cool. You know what I mean? You looking at shiny things, and that's all it is. You know what I mean? So it's very easy to influence the youth. You know. Well, the youth nowadays is getting even smarter with things. So thank God that, you know, they're gonna be better than we were when we were, you know, younger. So hopefully, right, they're not gonna make the same mistakes. But things happen, right? But we can only hope for the best. But what I'm trying to say is that I did pretty much get lost in the sauce, right? And I lost my roots and lost myself, you know, because I haven't really been home in a long time, you know. I want to say over 15 years or something like that. So, but I always had a strong foundation, you know what I mean? So I always kind of went back to who I was, but over time it became more of a theory than anything else. But a good theory nonetheless, right? But See, I feel like there's a point I'm trying to make. No matter how far I went, I will always go right back to who I was. You know, somehow, some way, I will always. It's like I will hang out with some people, and of course, be very influenced by those people, and start to think like them and things like that. But by the grace of God, I will always go back to myself and be like, okay, this works, this doesn't work, this works, this doesn't work, this works, this doesn't work. I was always able to do that because of who I am, you know what I mean? Of the maturity that I have as a person. And it showed with the women that I dated, right? Most of the women well, let me see. Yeah, most of the women I dated were older than me because I'm older mentally than I am physically. And I've been that way for a long time, right? So I've always been interested in mature women, right? But now that I'm scratching 30, it's interesting what kind of women I'm gonna attract in my life, because back then I didn't feel like raising women right to my level, because I was like, it's a waste of time. These girls, they just anyway. I had a different mindset back then, right? I dealt with people on my level mentally because that's what I value. I like conversation. I'm kind of a sapiosexual, meaning like I'm turned on by your mind, by what the way you think and things like that. So that's the kind of women that I attracted. Mature women, older women, right? Older than me. But now that I'm more mature even and older, I don't mind teaching women a few things. You know what I mean? I don't mind raising a woman to my standard and my level. Because I feel like as a man, that's what you're supposed to do anyway. So I'm becoming more of a man, right? So it's a beautiful thing. With age, you get better as a man. You know what I mean? That's what you're supposed to do, right? As a man, you're supposed to get better, evolve. So that's where I'm at with it now. So it's gonna be very interesting who my next girlfriend gonna be. Because of course, younger women tend to look better, but nowadays with technology and everything else, and the way that these women be taking care of themselves, you be looking at a 40-something woman that looks 20-something, and you don't even know until you ask certain things and they start saying certain things, and you're like, hold on, that don't sound like what? How old are you? You know what I mean? But yeah. And another thing, guys going well, if you're a man and you experience a few different women, you already know this. But I'm just speak just for the sake of speaking, so that the people who are listening can get hit to this. But you might think that younger means tighter and better and wetter and warmer and things like that, right? And I'm not gonna say what I'm talking about, because if you get it, you get it. I'm trying to not be crass. I'm trying to be classy. So you get my drift if you get my drift, okay? So you might think younger means better, tighter, warmer, whatever, right? But I didn't have older women that were way better than younger women. So yeah. And another thing, don't think that because a woman has a lot of miles, right? Meaning like she dated a whole bunch of guys, that it has any, well, I'm not a woman, so I don't know exactly. I can only speak from my experience. But from what I know, right? And again, I might be wrong because I don't know everything. I'm still learning. But from my experience, I didn't had younger that were not as good as older, right? But then I had older that was not as good as younger. So it really depends from person to person. You don't know what you're gonna get until you do that thing. You know what I mean? And that's when you're like, okay, this is good. This is dry. This is whack. You know what I mean? And I had different races of women too. So I'm not gonna say which one was which because I can't I can't put that on nobody. You know what I mean? Maybe that was that person. Maybe that was a specific person that I was dealing with that was subpar or whatever. But I'm gonna just say this, okay? I'm gonna keep it transparent. I'm gonna keep it transparent. So don't judge me and don't come at me for what I'm about to say. But most of the women I dated were black. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Okay. That's it. If you get it, you get it. I don't even feel like explaining anything. That's just what it is. Most of the women I dated were black. And again, black, when I say black, I'm really trying to be more relatable to people because for me specifically, there's no such thing as black. But that's just me though. You know what I mean? That's just me again, right? Because I believe that Eve was a black woman, right? So what are we talking about? That's it. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say on this. That's all I'm gonna say on this. All right. That's all I'm gonna say on this. If you get what I'm trying to say, you get it. That's it. If you got questions, hit me in the comments, and I'll explain, the best way I can. But that's all I'm gonna say for now. Yeah, this video right here is probably one of the best videos that I made. You know what I mean? One of the best videos that I made. You know what I mean? I'm so proud of myself. Because I did go to therapy at some point, right? Because a whole lot of those issues that I named in the beginning of this video caught up to me eventually. Because I never dealt with it. And, the thing is, like, when you don't complete something, you're going to repeat it, right? It's like if you're not really healed about anything, it's going to catch up to you at some point. You know what I mean? So the best thing for anybody to do is really to go to therapy, right? Or to make videos or to write. You know what I mean? Do some type of therapeutic work on yourself because believe it or not, we all gonna go through things. That's just part of life. However, a lot of us are still not taking self-care and therapy and health seriously. You know what I mean? We value things, we value shiny things, we value this and that, but we don't really put enough value on ourselves. You know what I mean? And it's like ourselves come first because if you're not taking care of yourself, I mean, what do you really have? You know what I mean? But that's another video. I don't feel like going too deep into that. But yes. Yes. I'm so happy and grateful to be who I am today. You know what I mean? I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud of myself. I came a long ways. You know what I mean? I came a long ways. And of course, I still have a long way to go. But guess what? It don't feel like a long way to go. You know why? Because this is a labor of love. This is a labor of love. So I'm loving it at every step of the way. You know, when you really know yourself, it's a beautiful thing. Because you're not going to settle for less. You're not going to go out here and get a job because that's what people tell you that you got to do. Like, nah, man. If that's not your makeup, don't do things because people tell you to do things. That's a big mistake. You know what I mean? You're going to do things, people going to say, oh, yeah, everybody does it. Why don't you do it? Well, guess what? I ain't going to go too deep into it, but Edison, Thomas Edison, people told the same thing to Thomas Edison, right? And a lot of people might not know who Thomas Edison is, but just think about light bulb, right? The reason why we got lights. We're taking that for granted, but that wasn't always the case back in the day. You know what I mean? We live in a very privileged world where we don't realize that a lot of the things, if not everything that we got today, really came out of somebody's imagination. It really came out of somebody's dreams. You know what I mean? The reason why you got an iPhone right now, we can talk about Steve Jobs. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure that he had that vision back then, but when he tried to do his thing, people told him it wasn't going to happen because of X, Y, and Z. But guess what? He didn't care, and he still made it happen. So can nobody tell me what to do? Because guess what? I got my whole plan set up. You can either get with the program or get left. It is what it is. It's no hate. Just know that I'm going somewhere great and you might want to be part of it because there's such a thing as the Bitcoin effect. And what I mean by the Bitcoin effect is when Bitcoin came out, again, people didn't take it seriously. People were like, "Oh, it's just another thing, blah 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 blah." But I bet you $100 billion that everybody wish they had some Bitcoin right now. I bet you any amount of money people wish they have Bitcoin right now. People wish they had Bitcoins where they were less than a dollar. You know what I mean? But that's the mentality. That's just human nature. You know what I mean? Not everybody gonna see your vision, man. That's okay. I wish I could. Well, I don't wish I could go back in time because then I wouldn't be me, right? But I'm gonna say like this: for anybody going through things, which is really everybody, right? So I'm speaking to the whole world right now. If you got a vision, focus on that. You know what I mean? Focus on your vision, man. Forget the noise. Forget the noise. Forget the noise. Forget the noise. There's always gonna be noise. There's always gonna be noise, man. There's always gonna be noise. There's always gonna be clowns. And why I call them clowns is because the same people that talk down to you when you're in the beginning stages are the same people that are gonna come. I want to say so much, but I don't want to use certain words, you know what I mean? I'm trying to upgrade. But they're going to be the same people later on down the line telling you, oh, you're so amazing, you're so great, but you can't even be mad at them because you know what? They don't know who they are. They haven't figured out themselves yet. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. When you're an evolved human being, you're going to go through evolved situations. That's just what it is. So just take it with grace. You know what I mean? Be grateful for what you're going through. Be grateful for what you're going through because that's going to be your legacy. I'm sorry, I fart a lot, but I'm human. And probably the food I'm eating is gassy, so it is what it is. You're gonna be straight. You know what I mean? You're gonna be straight. You're gonna be straight. Just focus on your vision. Focus on your vision. Focus on your vision. Focus on your vision. Focus on your goal. Be specific about your goal. Be specific about your vision. What do you want out of life? What really matters to you? Write it down. Why I say write it down is just so you know exactly what it is. And also when you write things down, you realize things that you might not always know when you're thinking about it. But if you really like something for real, a lot of it doesn't matter because that's all that's in your mind. And that's all that matters. Now, when you have that vision, people are going to come at you with negative suggestions. You got to be careful about that one. Because, like one of my favorite artists said, my man buy me sticks and stones, but words can't hurt me. She said that, right? But that's not really true. As much as I love her, I gotta keep it real. That's not really true. Words do hurt people. But there's a thing though. There's a way to have a protection against that. That's why you gotta focus on. And the way to protect yourself against that is by cultivating a habit of positive thoughts, positive affirmations. You gotta get in the habit of having those thoughts, of saying those positive things, of being surrounded by positive people. Because guess what? That's really your insurance policy right there. It's not the insurance policy you buy now. Your insurance policy is your affirmations. Is the people you're around, the positive energy that you surround yourself with on a daily basis, the habits that you form, the positive habit, the positive mentality, the positivity. That's really your insurance right there. That's really your health plan right there. That's really your money right there. If you want to be real about it, if you're rich, that's really how you get it. It's not the money, but it is the money. If you get it, you get it. So value those people who are positive, man. Surround yourself by positive people, man. And I'm not talking about physically, because now you have access to the internet. Now you have access to social media. Now you have access to YouTube. You can surround yourself by positivity all day. That's the point. And eventually you're going to attract people who are going to come into your life, and y'all going to surround yourself with more positivity, more blessings. Bless up, you know what I mean? More DJ Khaled energy, you know what I mean? Lion! Major key, you know what I mean? Mogul talk. That's what it is, man. That's the best thing I can tell you. That's the best gift I can give you before Christmas. I'm always giving gifts, but this one right here is special, and it's such a gift that by me giving it to you, I'm receiving You know what I mean? So we both getting it. So it's beautiful. Yeah, man. And women. You're gonna be straight. You're gonna be straight.